Enter Sir John Franklin, a seasoned but controversial explorer. Not exactly a hero, but not a failure either. His past expeditions were brutal. One saw half his crew perish, survivors eating lichen, and Franklin himself chewing his own boots to survive. Grim, right? Yet his men adored him, describing him as a kind, fatherly figure who shared hard-earned wisdom and fought for their safety. At 59, he wasn't the Admiralty's first choice. Younger, sharper candidates like William Perry were tired of Arctic treks, and others, like Francis Crozier, were overlooked for their humble roots. But Franklin's grit and charm won out, joined by Crozier and James Fitzjames as deputy commanders. Their mission? Navigate the Northwest Passage, a labyrinth of ice-choked channels to link the Atlantic and Pacific. Britain spared no expense, equipping the expedition with two cutting-edge ships, HMS Erebus, a battle-hardened warship from 1826, and the smaller HMS Terror, built in 1813. Both were retrofitted with iron-plated hulls, steam engines adapted from locomotives, and a groundbreaking desalination system to turn seawater into drinking water. High-tech for the 19th century. They carried 16,000 cans of food, 7,500 liters of liquor, 12,000 books, and even a camera to document the journey. A cat, a dog named Neptune, and a monkey gifted by Franklin's wife added a touch of warmth. Sounds like a floating city, doesn't it? On May 19, 1845, Erebus and Terror set sail from Greenhithe, England, with 134 men, brimming with hope. They stopped in Scotland, crossed the Atlantic, and resupplied at Greenland's Whalefish Islands. There, 5 sick crew members were sent home, leaving 129 to venture into the Arctic. Their final sighting? August 1845, waving cheerfully to whaling ships in Baffin Bay. Then poof, they vanished. For over a century, their fate baffled historians, sparking one of history's greatest mysteries: the frozen trap. The Arctic is a cruel master. Think endless snow, bone-chilling cold, and ice that can crush steel. The expedition's first winter hit hard, forcing Erebus and Terror to shelter in a small bay between Beechey and Devon Islands. Sails were replaced with massive tarps, creating a makeshift haven against blizzards. But trouble was brewing. 3 crew members died that winter, buried on Beechey Island. Pneumonia was blamed, but something darker was at play. What could it be? The canned food, 16,000 tins meant to sustain them, was a ticking time bomb. Hastily prepared by inexperienced workers, the cans were poorly sealed, letting bacteria like botulism fester. Worse, the soldering process leached lead into the food, poison in every bite. The desalination system, meant to provide fresh water, was another culprit. Its lead pipes corroded in salty conditions, spiking the crew's water with toxic levels of lead. Forensic studies in the 1980s, analyzing hair and tissue from Beechey Island graves, found lead levels 10 times higher than normal. Add to that a zinc deficiency from their diet, which forced their bodies to pull nutrients from bones, releasing even more stored lead into their blood. A toxic triple threat. Lead poisoning ravaged their health, brain fog, muscle weakness, and immune collapse. Tuberculosis, likely brought from Greenland, spread like wildfire in the cramped ships. By spring 1846, the crew was weakening, yet they pressed on, sailing 800 kilometers around Cornwallis Island before anchoring off King William Island. Franklin faced a choice: head east for open waters or west toward the passage's heart. He chose west, believing it safer. Big mistake. The western route was a trap, funneling the ships into a choke point of ice. By late 1846, Erebus and Terror were frozen solid, surrounded by the densest ice fields in the Arctic. No way out. Descent into despair. The second winter was brutal. Terror, smaller and more vulnerable, was nearly crushed, forcing the crew to consolidate on Erebus. Food dwindled, and the toxic cans were now their only sustenance. On June 11, 1847, disaster struck. Sir John Franklin died, likely from lead poisoning or tuberculosis. The heart of the expedition? Gone. The crew, now led by Crozier, clung to hope, leaving a note in a cairn on King William Island, claiming all is well. But it wasn't. The Arctic summer of 1847 was freakishly cold, part of a 50-year climatic dip. The ice didn't melt, trapping the ships for a third winter. By April 1848, food was nearly gone, and 24 men, including 9 officers, were dead. The 105 survivors made a desperate call. abandoned the ships and trekked 240 kilometers to the back river, hoping to reach a trading post. They dragged lifeboats loaded with 3 tons of gear across the ice, a grueling march in sub-zero temperatures. Can you feel the desperation? Weakened by lead poisoning, scurvy, and starvation, many collapsed. Some turned back to the ships, others scattered, hoping to find their own path. Over 20 bodies were later found along King William Island's shores, left behind to lighten the load. A heartbreaking choice. The grim truth. Survival at a cost, Inuit accounts, initially dismissed, painted a horrific picture. In the 1850s, locals reported finding a derelict ship, likely Erebus, with its stove still burning and bodies on bunks. They met 4 survivors, one near death from starvation, while the others seemed healthier. Why? The chilling answer: cannibalism. The starving man refused to eat human flesh, but his companions hadn't. Inuit later described finding over 30 bodies, bones cut and marrow extracted, confirming the crew's descent into survival cannibalism, a last resort to cling to life. Historians, like those at Real World Channel, initially doubted these accounts, blaming translation errors or cultural bias. But by the 1990s, forensic evidence, cut marks on bones, proved the Inuit were right. The truth was undeniable. The expedition's final days were a grim fight against nature and their own failing bodies. The search for answers. Back in England, Franklin's wife, Lady Jane, refused to give up. A woman on a mission. When the Admiralty dragged its feet, she rallied public support, enlisting Charles Dickens to amplify her cause. By 1848, rescue missions were launched, with rewards up to £20,000, about $2.5 million today. James Ross, a friend of Crozier's, joined the search, scouring the Arctic. Over the next decade, 11 ships hunted for clues, finding scattered remains and Inuit reports of white men heading south. But it was too late. In 2014, Erebus was found in Crampton Bay, remarkably preserved. 2 years later, Terror was located nearby. These discoveries confirmed the ship's final resting place, but many questions linger. What happened to the last survivors? Small groups likely perished in the snow, their bodies lost forever. A parallel tragedy, the balloon expedition. The Arctic's dangers didn't end with Franklin. In 1897, Swedish engineer Salomon August André attempted to reach the North Pole by hydrogen balloon, a bold but risky plan. Talk about dreaming big. Critics called it reckless. Balloons were hard to steer, and the Arctic's winds were unforgiving. Yet King Oscar II backed André, and on July 11, 1897, he and 2 companions, Niels Strindberg and Knut Frankel, launched from Svalbard. Their balloons soared, then vanished. For 33 years, their fate was a mystery. In 1930, Norwegian scientists found their remains on Kvitoya Island, along with diaries, photos, and a boat marked André's Polar Expedition 1896. The balloon had leaked, forcing a crash after 3 days. The trio trekked for months, hunting seals and polar bears, but succumbed to cold and exhaustion by October. A tragic echo of Franklin's fate. The legacy of courage. The Franklin expedition and André's balloon venture remind us of humanity's relentless drive to explore, even at great cost. They dared to face the unknown. Their stories, though tragic, paved the way for future discoveries, mapping the Arctic and inspiring generations. The frozen North remains a testament to their courage and a warning of nature's unforgiving power. What drives us to such extremes? Join us as we uncover more tales of bravery and mystery, peeling back history's hidden layers.